Marcus Aurelius is not a philosopher. He is a student. This is a message he makes very clear in his book, Meditations, which makes him the most misunderstood man. This video isn't some self-improvement lesson, but rather a look at Marcus Aurelius without him being taken out of context for people to romanticize Stoic philosophy. Meditations, which is composed of 12 books that are all journal entries, is meant for Marcus Aurelius, a way for him to simplify the complex experiences and teachings he's learning about as an emperor and as a student of philosophy. Typically, when you're reading a book and the word "you" is introduced, it's referring to the reader. However, Meditations is not a book. It is a journal from Marcus Aurelius that he wrote for himself. Everything he says in there is referring to only him. It's why the book is so repetitive and why he's constantly reminding himself of things he finds to have value. The first chapter in his book is just him thanking people and acknowledging his status and power and how grateful he is for the life that he has. He makes it very clear, not to the reader, but to himself, that he really doesn't understand complex philosophies that he's learning about, and that this is a journal meant for him to simplify what he's learning in order to remember the core value of these lessons. And that if there's anything he does understand, it's that anyone who calls themselves a philosopher doesn't have a full understanding of what that even means, that we are all students. You should read this book not because the content is amazing, because it's not, it's very simple, but because of Marcus Aurelius himself. I find this book to be fascinating because Marcus Aurelius decides that with the power he already has, his only other obligation would be to improve himself fully. As you're reading Meditations, you'll find that a rule he has set for himself in writing these journals is that he cannot complain. Not that he shouldn't or isn't allowed to, but that he wants to put himself in a position where complaining itself does not exist, as if there is no such thing as complaining. And this makes his writing unique. Every question he writes down, he attempts to come to a logical conclusion as to what an answer could be, and finds that he only asks more questions to find answers to. This is why there are only 3 things he points out to himself that are clearly evident: nature, responsibility, and knowledge. Now remember, he is not stating a fact here, he's only pointing out a logical conclusion he has come to from questioning the experiences and teaching he's receiving as a way to refine himself. Marcus Aurelius points out that change is inevitable, and this is evident through nature, that what is happening now isn't good nor bad, but rather required. Nature doesn't dictate what should or shouldn't happen, it just is. And through knowing this, Marcus Aurelius follows what he calls responsibility. As humans, he feels that we have an obligation to be human, that if there is a purpose, it is to do what is expected of us, and be better. He explains that everything and everyone lives for each other, and if we do anything but what we must do, then we're doing something wrong. The only moment Marcus Aurelius is ever seen complaining is when he's disappointed in himself for having thought of leisure rather than pursuing knowledge. If anything, he was disciplined and eager to attain knowledge. This was meant to embody what he came to understand as our infinite lack of knowledge, and that the only way to come to the conclusions he has come to, and the only way to better himself, would be to be an intellectual, be knowledgeable of what he can know. This includes his desire to conquer the fear of death. In Meditations, it is clear that this is a topic he finds difficult to tackle. It's clear while reading that he never did overcome his fear of death, as he wanted to live for as long as he could to better himself and others. But in many ways, he was prepared to die. He came to the conclusion that with the lessons of nature, responsibility, and knowledge, he must accept that life will change to death, and that he has an obligation to live as best as he can and accept death with a loving embrace. Marcus Aurelius would repeat that being selfless should be his aim, but funny enough, something I don't think even he recognized was that him being selfish was the most selfless thing he could have done. He utilized every resource provided to him for him to improve himself fully, and did so to better the lives around him and show his gratitude to those alive, dead, and divine, that have taught him lessons and have filled his life with wisdom. This book has many fascinating Stoic conclusions, and one lesson that I've learned from the many Marcus Aurelius pushed on himself was that everyone should be a student.